Welcome to the Coaching Life, episode number 100.
100.
Sitting here with my podcasting partner, Pat Martin. How are you doing today, brother?
Good, Coach. How are you, man?
Fantastic, because we made it to 100 episodes. 100 episodes. Can you believe that?
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. We've been through a lot.
Yeah, we have.
Sat in this room for a while and did some podcasting, and then, I don't know, probably about a year and a half of doing some episodes. Not even a year and a half, really. When we
I
started,
can't remember what
2019.
month we started in.
Yeah, it was. I think we went less than a year before we had to
remote.
go remote for a while, and then, as we look back through some of our past episodes, a good bit of, in fact, almost a majority of our episodes have been with me talking on a microphone and you talking through Zoom or Teams remotely.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's wild.
It doesn't seem like that.
I know.
It seems like we've been here more, but I'm definitely glad to be back in the studio, though. I can tell you that.
I'm glad to have you back, and I know our listeners are glad to have your voice back on the mic.
Yeah, we're here to listen to some of these clips.
Buttery voice. Yeah.
I don't sound all the same in all of them. I sound kind of squeaky a little bit, but yeah, episode 100.
Yeah.
We made it.
Yeah. And so we've thought about what to talk about. Should we have a guest on? What should we do for our 100th episode? We wanted to do something special, especially for those of you, the handful of you who've been listening to us all along the way. Now, we don't assume that everyone who subscribes to our podcast has actually listened to all 99 episodes of our podcast.
Right.
That'd be awesome if so. And if you have, let us know. That'd be awesome to hear from you. So for that reason, here's what Pat and I decided to do for our ceremonial 100th episode. We went back through the 99 previous episodes that we've done, and we asked ourselves, what are some of the highlights? What are some of the memorable highlights that we have just ourselves? That's our podcast, so we can choose whatever our highlights are, right?
But it was tough. It was difficult.
Very difficult,
Yeah.
because we've had so many good guests as well,
Right.
And I wanted to go immediately to those,
Yeah.
But we've had more than 5. We kind of wanted to pick five highlights from the past 100 episodes, from the past 99 episodes, and and it's hard, because 2 of those guests are related to me, so it's
Right.
It's like to not include. To include one but not the other, or not include both of them makes me. So I need to tell my wife right now, hey, I really truly believe that Brock and Kaylee's episodes were the best 2 episodes we've ever done.
I do. I think Brock's
They were
was
really
the best
good.
episode we've ever done.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. He had some really good stuff to say. He really did.
And it just kind of flowed. Everything that we had been talking about up to that point, he verified it.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
validated it.
Because
He
we
validated
had.
us.
That's exactly right. We needed that validation for our PDP, our player
You're
development
right.
program that we were talking about. Because honestly, he was the first guest that we had, I believe, and we weren't even sure how long we were going to do this podcast. You guys will hear in a little bit when we play some clips from some old episodes. The second episode that we did, you were kind of like, we're going to talk a little bit about this idea we have, and it might be 2, 3, 4 episodes, who knows?
Yeah.
And that might be it. And here we are sitting at one. This thing has morphed into something bigger than just talking about player development among youth sports and youth baseball, particularly.
You'll probably hear me say a lot in those earlier edshodes. I was.
You've grown very, very well. We won't tell everybody that our post-production editing has gotten better. Pulling those. No, I'm teasing.
Shoot. Yeah.
No. So what we have for you today is 5 to 7. 5 to 7. We might have a couple of bonuses in there.
Yeah. Knowing us, we're not going to stop at 5.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We're going to play you some brief clips, some sound bites from an episode. So we'll start with one. We'll start with one of the episodes that we've chosen. We'll play a sound bite, and then you and I just chat about it. Let's respond to it. Let's have a live reaction here. You ever watch those on YouTube, the reaction videos where
Yes.
a guy will be listening to an album for the first time and then be like, oh yeah, this bangs. Yeah. Or the, I don't know about that.
I have seen those.
Yeah, so even though we've said it and we know we kind of we'll maybe remember what we were talking about there, it'll be interesting, I think, to go back and revisit where we were at the time. So, are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
All right, let's do it. This is from bonus episode between 5 and 6. We did a bonus episode where we came in midweek. Actually, I came in midweek. This was the first time we used Zoom, actually. First time we used remote.
I remember setting on my back deck.
Yeah, it was raining at your house even, and I can remember hearing the rain. But we talked about the issue of building a mistake avoidance culture in your teams.
Yeah.
And so here is a clip from that. Whenever a kid is playing to not make a mistake, they will never play to their full potential.
Absolutely.
It is impossible for them to do so. I mean, because they have to hold back a little bit just to be sure that they don't make a mistake. I mean, they have to monitor themselves, so to speak. And so what's going to happen is you as a coach, you're only going to get so much out of them because they're having to hold back because they're so concerned about making a mistake. And the question I want to ask us coaches and us parents is, why are they so concerned about making mistakes? Why are they worried about it? It's because we create that mindset in our kids. We create it by our words and we create it by our actions.
Coach, you give a list of what I'd call behaviors. You say, do you find yourself doing this during your children's games or during the games that you coach? And it's just a list of different things. And after you read them, you say, if you said yes to one of these, you might be someone that is creating a culture of mistake avoidance. And I remember very, very clearly reading this, and it was just one after another. Yep, I do that. Yep. And it brings me back. I remember it before. This was a time before I read the book. There was a situation. I was coaching my oldest son, Jake. I think it was a fall ball season. He may have been 10 or 11 years old. And I don't even remember what he did wrong. And that, that's another point to make.
Yeah.
Always remember that as we go through the sports youth sports life cycle that we are as athletes and as parents, as coaches, not only are we not going to remember what these mistakes are, but other people definitely aren't going to remember. Exactly. So they're very small things, but something happened. He didn't cover second base or whatever, and I basically stopped the game to yell at him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a meeting. It was a from a dugout to second base scream.
Yeah.
Kind of, what are you doing? Get your head in the game. And after the game, my dad came up to me, and I knew he wasn't very happy. And he said, "You're too hard on Jake." And I said, I wasn't hearing that. I didn't want to hear that. And I said, no.
You're just thinking that's grandpa,
Yeah, exactly.
Taking up for grandson, right?
Sure. And, I said, our relationship's fine. He understands. He said, no, you don't get it. When you do stuff like that, you're embarrassing him in front of a bunch of people, and you're making him afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah. Making him timid to play.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want your kids to play timid.
Hit me with that right off the bat, huh? It's going to be tough to respond to these. I think thoughts come and go. As I had one thought as the clip started, and
Well, I have a question for you.
okay,
Have you done better?
yeah,
That's almost 2 years ago that you said that.
yeah. No, I think that was my final thought, is that there's some bittersweet reflection on that story there, because I do feel like I've improved, really. I mean, from my kids' perspective, dramatically. I think I've improved, but I'm still improving. And one thing that came to mind is I'm coaching a 12U fall baseball team, and we had been practicing a throw down to third when there's runners on first and third to get the runner at third, and we tried that this weekend, and my third baseman didn't cut in on the baseball. He kind of just stayed at third base, and it didn't work out as well as what we thought it would. The run ended up scoring, but I coached him at that point, and that's something that I've been cognizant of as a coach over the last couple of years, is trying not to scream out instruction or coaching, during the middle of an inning, because I'm pretty confident in saying that I don't know how much that helps. You're much better off to bring them off the field. But that came to mind, is that I'm still not perfect at it. Mm-hmm. I still shout some things out, but I'm better, and better for the better. I think it's made me a better coach and really a better dad. And I think my kids have actually enjoyed sports a lot more.
And they've probably played a little more loose. You know, I mean, the whole point of not having mistake avoidance, having that as a mindset among our teams, is that we don't want them to play tight. We want them to play freely, to be aggressive, and rather than playing to make, just like we're talking about, to not make a mistake. Yeah. Some kids go out there and their only thought is, don't make a mistake, don't make a mistake, don't make a mistake. And you can see a lot of times who those kids are, because they're the ones that when they swing and miss, they look directly toward the stands, to a particular place in the stands. They overthrow first base, shortstop fields a routine ground ball and throws it over first baseman's head. They kind of glance up into the stands, and who are they looking for there? They're looking for that parent, most likely, who has developed a mistake avoidance mindset in their kids.
And I think we're gonna sum a lot of things up, but it's not just about sports,
right?
In life, you're gonna fail. Yeah, you're gonna fail a lot, and the important part about that is how you respond to that failure. But knowing that you really can't succeed, you can't have great successes without failure. Mm-hmm. And if you go through life and you're not failing, you're probably not accomplishing too much. So I think it's a key to keep in mind that when you see your kid or your players fail out on the field, out on the court, there's some positive to that. And there's opportunity in that to be better players, but most importantly, to be better people.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's do another one.
All right.
Moment number 2. This was actually from episode 15 that was titled "What Really Matters," and we sort of took a theme from one of the chapters from my book, Building Champions, that's actually titled "What Really Matters." And we actually reposted this as episode number 58. So this is the one podcast episode that we have posted twice. I think I put a little different introduction to it. I think we had a week there where one of us was out of town. We're just too busy or something, and we're like,
Gotcha.
let's get something out. And so we thought, we must have thought we had some good stuff on this particular episode, and so we selected this one as our second highlight moment. So here is a clip from What Really Matters, episode 15.
I remember being at a 10U travel game, and you were there. We were talking to each other, and you were talking to me about this concept. And during that game, what I saw was, I saw a kid in one inning. Probably, I think he made 4 errors, and they were tough plays.
It was a 10U game.
Right. They were tough plays. Off the end of his glove. Hard bad bounce. Whatever. But he made 4 errors, and the reason we were talking about is because when you came over, you said something like, I heard that he had a rough inning, and I said, well, I was kind of sticking up for him. You know what I mean? And the catch is, I minimized those mistakes because I was not invested in that game as, say, I would have been if that was my son. If that was my son,
Yeah.
it would have probably been a bad moment for me as a parent
Yeah.
and for him as a player. I probably wouldn't have handled it well,
Yeah.
right? But because I was not invested in that game, I had a different perspective. So I think, going out, if people's out there listening and they're like, hey, man, I want to be, a better, but I don't know how to do it. I think a great starting point is to go find a 10U game or go find an 8U game and just watch it by yourself. And
Find one that you don't know anyone playing.
yeah,
You don't know any of the parents, and you don't know any of the umpires.
yeah.
You have nothing vested in that game, in that experience at all.
Right. I'm getting goosebumps because I'm getting to a point that I want to make. But, you go do that. And like you said, the umpires won't be as bad.
Yep.
Right. They'll be much more fair. Right. You'll see them giving a lot
Yeah.
more effort than what you do. The coaches won't be as bad.
Or you won't care as much
And you won't care as much
about the umpires'
What will you
calls.
care about? You'll care about the enjoyment of the game. You'll care about watching these kids play baseball. And the point I want to make about the 10U kid is this. This is what we miss. This is what we miss when we're so invested and we let it drive, the way we respond negatively. We miss that what this kid did. He was a great teammate. He hustled off the field. He hustled on the field. He actually got moved to a different position. His body language was still positive. He still fought. He cheered his teammates on. And let me tell you, from an outsider's perspective, I learned more about that kid in that moment, in how he responded to that failure, than if he would have scooped those ground balls up and made the plays. Because what he told me was he's a winner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And those are the types of people in life that we want on our side. Those are the type of people in life when we go out and we're trying to find people, to fill positions and fill leadership roles. Those are the types of people that we want. And if we're so invested in the game that we are rehashing these negative points, it's so easy
And that's
to
all
miss.
we're thinking about. Yeah, it's easy. Man, that's a great point, Pat.
Yeah.
That's what we miss.
There's some heartache in that old boy's voice there. I don't know if you can hear it. I can feel it as the words come out of his mouth. I stole that idea from you, though, going to a 10U ball game and just you don't have any association with. I know that you talked about that quite a few times and how you enjoyed doing that. But what a segue from the first sound bit we had, because that's exactly what we were talking about. How do you come back from that? What really matters? That's what really matters, is how you handle that adversity, and seeing that, being able to see the majesty that is in the game of baseball or softball or really any sports. But
Right.
we all know that baseball's the greatest game.
Of course it is. Well, and being able to understand the answer to that question as a mom or a dad,
Yeah.
who is you're the one that's spending 95% of the time to involved with your kids in their athletic endeavors when they're younger. And I think one of the points about this conversation was we need to really understand what the answer to that question is. What really matters. And the second time we posted this particular episode as episode 58, the title of it was The Car Ride Home. And at the beginning of that episode, I actually told a story from the introduction of my book where I said that I came to realize that I was focusing way too much attention on things that didn't matter as much. And I noticed that as I looked back on my life. I didn't notice it in the moment when this happened, but as I looked back on my life and I thought about a particular car ride from a tournament that we were playing to the hotel, which was about a 15-minute ride from a game to the hotel back where we were going. And that was a game where, my 11-year-old son at the time had a horrible day, just a bad day, bad day at the plate, made some errors, just didn't feel like, he really wanted to be there, you know? And I let him know all the way back on that ride. I let him know, look, your mom and I pay a lot of money. We invest a lot of time. We take off work. You better, and this is how you're going to play the game. This is the effort we're going to get out of you. This is what, and just berated him all the way there. And get back to the hotel. As soon as we walk in the room, first thing he says, can I go down to the pool with so-and-so, my buddies, my teammates? And I was like, well, yeah, sure. And I'm still sitting up in there in that room, steaming about the daggum game.
Yeah.
And, I'm grateful that I eventually caught it in myself. And I know that there are probably dads listening right now, and you haven't caught it yet. I've had people come up to me and tell me that they listen to our podcast and they really like it, or they've read my book and they really like it. And then I've watched their behavior at games, and I think to myself, did you really read it?
Yeah.
But I did the same thing.
Right.
I did the same thing. It's just so hard to stop yourself in that moment when it's happening and say, what I'm really getting angry about my 10-year-old kid about right now isn't what really matters when we look back on this thing.
Yeah. I think what you just said there is the key, is looking back. The reflection is important, and, having a plan, going forward, because I'll be honest with you, I think intentions are always good, but it's about the execution.
Yeah.
When you were on that car ride to the hotel, 100% you believe you were doing the right thing.
Sure.
Right. Motivating him, letting him know what mattered, what was really important, what really mattered. And you know what? Effort is important.
Yeah.
And performance is important. But how are you going to get that? Right. How are you going to get there?
Right.
And how are you going to make them see why it's important? Right.
And you know what's just as important as effort and performance? Perspective.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
And I completely lost perspective on that car ride home. Yeah. It's
easy to do.
There's a bigger view that we need to have. So, all right, moving
Put
right
some time
along.
into it, folks. Think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. In 2019, which seems like a decade ago, in December, you and I decided to do 5 to 10 minute mini episodes and release one a day during the weekdays. We skipped the weekend leading up to Christmas. And we called it the 12 Days of Coaching. And one of those episodes has made our highlight reel. And it is day 8, in which we talked about knowing your roles. The title of it was Know Your Role, Everyone. So we talked about the importance of everyone that's involved in youth sports, understanding what their role is and embracing that role, and understanding the value in behaving properly within that role.
Nurturing those roles.
Yes. And so here is a brief clip from that episode.
We're going to talk about knowing your role today. Everybody, everyone.
Yeah. What all groups of people does that include?
Man, it's a bunch. I think people might overlook it. But
When you go to attend a youth sports event,
yeah,
you have different, if it's like a theater, you have different characters, right?
Yeah.
You are the main characters.
you got your coaches, you got your players.
Yeah, I'd say the players
Players are the main,
without a doubt, the
obviously.
main character.
Shoot, in that regard, and during a game, coaches actually get bumped down quite a. You have your officials.
I would agree. Yeah, I would say players and officials are the two main characters
Yeah,
in the game.
yeah. And then you got coaches, you got fans, you have
Unrelated fans.
I was gonna say you have parent fans, you have
Unrelated.
just family fans, friends
Oh, yeah,
fans.
yeah.
You have
Boyfriend, girlfriend fans.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you have just people that show up to watch a game or are walking by. You have concession workers. You have
Yeah, there you go.
You have field workers. Some places you have gatekeepers, the people that let you in the gate. So a bunch of different roles.
Yeah.
So
that are needed and necessary to make an event like that take place.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not all are needed, I guess. But
Well,
it makes it what it is.
The function.
It
The
ma-
function.
Without a doubt. It makes it what it is.
Right. How important is it to know that when you go into a game, what your role is?
So are you asking me? Are you asking me if I go to a game because it is my child's game and my child is 11 years old and therefore I have to drive my child to the game? We get to the game, he gets out of the car, he gets warmed up, he listens to his coach puts him in a position, he stands in the batter's box, an umpire calls a ball or a strike. What is my role in all of that?
Yeah.
My role as parent. So what does that mean? What should I be doing at that moment?
I know what
I
you
would
do.
say my role would be to enjoy what I'm seeing, to enjoy watching my kid play.
You're right.
And if I decide I would like to cheer for my child, I'll do that. But that's not even necessary, I don't think.
Well,
I'd rather cheer for the whole team. I'd rather to hear parents cheer for the whole team if you're going to cheer than just for one player.
we've talked about that before.
Yeah. But I don't even think cheering, because my own kids have said, I don't care if you cheer or not.
They don't even hear you, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
No, they don't hear you.
Back
Stay in
up.
your lane. Is that what you're saying? Says,
in your lane.
don't try to umpire. I'm a parent. Don't try to umpire. I'm a parent. Don't try to coach. I'm a parent. Don't try to play.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Phew, that's tough, though.
it is.
I probably broke that rule. Everything that you said there, I probably broke it. Because as a fan, I've coached and I've umpired, and
It's so hard not to coach from the stands.
it
isn't
is.
it?
It's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough.
It's so hard not to officiate from the stands.
Yeah, really hard not to officiate.
Yeah.
That's the easy one. Everybody does that.
Yeah.
Especially in a basketball game or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think it was long after that episode that your brother-in-law caught me yelling at an official during a match. pulled me aside, said, "Pat, is that what you guys talk about at the coach?"
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Oh, boy.
That's good stuff. I think everyone wants to make an impact on the game,
Yeah.
but they don't really understand how they can make that impact and when they can make that impact. Knowing your role is so important. I think knowing your role and our inability to do that, and not just that, but our failure to talk about this, our failure to have discussions around this is a big part of why we're losing.
Yeah.
We're losing numbers in certain sports. And I know, for baseball in particular, I talk to kids all the time. I talked to a junior this past weekend that, I said, "Are you going to play? Are you thinking about playing baseball?" And he said, I'm no good. I said, "Well, I didn't ask you that."
Yeah, that's the question that I asked.
Do you like playing? He says, "Yeah, I like playing. I'm just not that good." And I said, "Well, everyone has a role in the team." Mm-hmm. And I think understanding how you just don't have to play, center field to have an impact on a ball game. Mm-hmm. So knowing your role is important, and then obviously the conversation there is from a much different perspective. It's more about knowing when to act and when not to act, and there's a lot of valuable information in there. It's about it all.
Right. Yeah, there's so much that we can, so many different directions you can go with the idea of roles. Well, I remember it was a handful of episodes back, I think we gave some ideas for coaches. Did we talk about this on the podcast about in the player manual, the playbook that I put together for our team?
Yeah.
I have on a different page for every coach. And even players and parents, like what our expectations are for our players, what our expectations are for our parents, and people who attend our games, and then there's a job description, a literal job description that we've come up with as a coaching staff for the head coach, the first base coach, the third base coach, the bench coach, the pitching coach, the hitting coach, and all of those. And if we have one person in every one of those roles, that's fantastic. Because usually more than one person's, or one person's doing more than one of those roles.
Right.
And so you might have multiple roles when it comes to, a lot of you who listen to our podcast, you're dad, but you're also coach. And that's a really tough one, because there are times when dad would say things that coach shouldn't say. And there are times that coach says things that dad shouldn't say. And you've got to understand when to put those hats on and off. And, you and I have both been through, you still walk through that, and my days of doing that are over. But you know, I'll maybe be a grandpa someday, and I'll be
Will you regress when you become a
back to
grandparent?
all this stuff? I don't ask your. Apparently, your dad handled it well. I guess you know. I do hear mine. I do hear mine yell at officials a little bit though.
My dad yells at officials too. Yeah, he doesn't hold back.
There you go.
Yeah, you know what I'd say.
They've earned it, right? They've earned
course
it.
they have.
We'll let them have a pass. They paid their
absolutely.
dues.
One thing that sticks out to my mind is, you know, people not understanding that everyone has a role and those roles have impacts on the game. You know what I experienced this summer is how important a ball boy is.
Sure.
Yeah, and the impact on a team.
Yeah.
When that ball boy isn't in the
It's
dugout.
gone.
Yes. Someone else has to do it.
Oh yeah.
And that takes your focus off of, you know, something else that you could be doing in the game. So, you know,
You're talking specifically about a young man who was chasing foul balls in a weekend full of games.
yeah.
And my wife noticed him as well. It's your son.
Yeah.
Son. He 11-year-old, 12-year-old.
He's 11.
11-year-old, attending 15-year-olds games, and we had this as a role for players, but he just kind of took it upon himself, and our guys got used to it and took it for granted.
Yes.
That he was just going to go and get them all.
Yeah.
Well, he got
it's easy.
tired. He wanted a snow cone or something, right? He wanted to go sit by his mom for a game, which is fine. We're not paying him to do
Right,
it, you know. And all of a sudden, I hear you, and they're like, "Hey, fellas, you got to go get the foul balls now. You lost your foul ball getter, you know." And then they realize how important and how valuable that role is.
Yeah.
To have someone doing that.
Yep.
That just every little role that we take for granted is.
Yeah, it wasn't just them either. It was me because
Sure.
obviously I had to motivate them to go get the ball. So as another thing as a coach, that as an assistant coach, you have to think about doing. You have to so all those little roles matter,
Right.
and doing performing your role at the best of your ability.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important,
It's important.
to and it's important to share your gratitude to those people as well, because we created this past year, one of the things that I noticed every time I walked into the locker room in the spring was it was spotless, smelled good. It didn't smell like a locker room. And one day I walked in there, it was before any of our kids had gotten out of school, and I had that fresh, clean smell to it, and the toilets were clean as can be, sparkly. And I thought, we need to show our appreciation to the custodian.
good
So
for
we
you.
we got our little letterhead out and wrote a little note and had all the guys sign it, and then put it in an envelope and stuck it in this custodial room, just to say what you're doing matters.
Yeah.
It matters to us, and we appreciate it.
Awesome.
And, yeah.
That's great stuff right there.
So, all right. Where are we? Number 4?
Number 4.
Number 4. Good deal. We're about 30 minutes in, buddy. This is good. Good stuff. So we're moving on now to episode number 69. And this episode is called Let It Go.
Yeah.
Let It Go. And there's probably going to be a common theme through a lot of
that's
these.
what I was thinking
We've
as
chosen, because as I'm thinking about what we're probably going to say on this one from the clip, I think it's very similar to what we've talked about in some of the early ones, but I guess you can tell what you and I find as our favorite conversation.
Yeah, I guess so.
Let's see what we got here.
So there's 2 monks, one old, one young. They're on a journey between monasteries, and they're walking along. And these are celibate monks. They have a vow that, or at least one of their vows, is that they're not to have any relationship with women. And they're walking along, and it had been raining for the last few days, and they came upon a river that, because of the rain, was really swift and fairly dangerous, challenging to cross. But what they saw down on the riverbank was an old lady, and she was standing there, and she was needing to cross the river, but she was afraid to go across. And the monks, they stood there, they evaluated the situation for a few minutes, and then eventually the old monk took off down toward the riverbank, and he wrapped his arms around the old lady and picked her up and carried her through the water. So he and the younger monk waded through the raging water and got the old lady to the other side, and then the older monk put the lady down, and no words were said, but they went on their separate ways. So the old monk and the young monk continued on to the next monastery. And the thing is that the younger monk was bothered by what he had witnessed at the riverbank, because he knew that, basically this his companion had broken their vow. And the longer they walked, the more it bothered the younger monk, and the more frustrated and the more angry he became. And hours had gone by, and he was still angry. As a matter of fact, he just became more angrier as they went, until eventually he couldn't stand it anymore, and he busted out, screamed, "I can't believe you did that!" And it kind of caught the old monk by surprise, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" And the young monk said, "I can't believe that you put your hands on that woman." He said, "We're not supposed to have any relationship with a woman. We're not supposed to touch women, but you wrapped your arms around her. You carried her across." And the old monk said, "What? I'm not for sure what you're talking about. What woman?" And that made the young monk even more mad. And he said, "The woman at the river, the one that you carried across." And then finally, the old monk gave in, and he kind of coyly said, "Oh, that's right, that woman." He said, "That was hours ago. I put her down as soon as we crossed the river. Why are you still carrying her?" As human beings, Coach, we have this tendency, I would say it's a fault, to carry things in our hands, but a lot of the times it's in our hearts and in our minds that we carry these things.
Most of the time it is.
And that's where it causes the most damage.
Yeah.
The reality of competition, the reality of sports is, even if you are prepared, because you're prepared not to make that first mistake, but even if you're prepared not to make a second mistake in a row, you still can.
Yes.
And
which means you have to be prepared for how you're going to handle it. And I think that's where a lot of I think that's where the problem doesn't ever get better, because we don't practice the right things to get better at this. It's a practice. In order to get better, we have to practice it. It's like you said, it's a skill that needs to be developed. But the problem is, and I think when coaches don't understand this is where they end up compounding the issue, because they think that the solution to not making mistakes is physical all the time. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is physical. And I'll even say it this way. A lot of times it is. But a lot of times it's not. It's mental. And so what happens is we compound the issue by saying, stay afterwards, you're going to run sprints, right? You're not in good enough shape. Or we're going to hit ground balls. We're practicing after this game. You're going to run until you puke, things like that, right? And we need to take more swings. We need to field more ground balls. You need to hit until your hands bleed, things like that. And somehow we're thinking that the more ground balls we field, the more swings we take, that's going to help us in the making mistake after mistake after mistake, when it's obvious that it doesn't, because even professionals can have a tendency to make more than one mistake. And they're the most practiced people in the world in the games that they play. And so I think the secret to being able to overcome the mistake and not allowing one mistake become two, and then allowing that snowball effect, or as some people say, the wheels to fall off in the middle of an inning or in the middle of a game, is understanding that the way to practice this isn't always physical. It is mental. It's knowing how to react when something bad happens. Is there anything else to say?
It's a good one.
That's not just a sports lesson.
Nah, definitely not. Definitely not at all. Yeah, it's good. I think of Solomon, King Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes. At least we think he did.
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes talks about there's a season for everything.
Right.
And I guess understanding that and knowing that is important. You know, we talk about being ready for those mental mistakes, or being ready for mistakes, period, and knowing how to respond when they happen. Knowing that allows you to let it go. You know, and we're not saying that failure and mistakes shouldn't hurt by any stretch of the imagination, but knowing that they're going to come, and knowing that that there's a way beyond them,
Right.
is very important. I think that's important. You know, from a sports perspective, a lot of times if you're running a drill, if you're fielding ground balls, if you're swinging in the cage or whatever, you'll see this happen with a lot of athletes. If they miss a ball, if they make a mistake, they'll stop. They'll pout might not be the right word, although some do. Some pout, but they will might verbally or with their body language show that they've been defeated, that they failed in some way.
Yeah.
And I think it's important in those moments to encourage them not to do that.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is they're giving power to that failure. They're amplifying that mistake, and you can't. That they're taking themselves out of a position to respond.
Yeah.
So having that right approach, having that right, you said it before, perspective, and knowing that that unpleasant things are going to happen to you.
Yeah. Knowing when to just let it go.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
you talk about that on the baseball field or the basketball court or the football field or whatever your playing field might be, but how about when you're sitting on the couch at home and you happen to open up whatever your favorite social media is and you read something that you vehemently disagree with,
Right.
Right.
Right. Yes.
and you're in that moment tempted to go down that rabbit hole of anger and frustration and hatred, and maybe even respond in the comment section when you should probably be just letting it go.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yep.
Such a valuable tool in our toolkit that we need to bring to the top, I think. Well, probably the most, I'll say this: a lot of these 5 episodes that we've selected, or 7, if we get to the last 2, these actually were also the highest downloads that we've had. So that it's not just you and I picking moments, but I think we forgot to say that we have the ability to look back through and see how many downloads we've received. Aside from that very first one, the introduction to what our Coaching Life podcast is, that's
Where everyone was
astronomically
excited
different. Because anyone that joins a new, that finds a new podcast out there, a lot of times they scroll straight down and listen to the very first one. Okay, this is what this podcast is about, probably. And so we have, there's a couple hundred more of that one than any other ones. But from that point forward, and there have been some that are later on. Like our most recent one with Matthew Blanchard has surpassed a lot of the episodes we've done recently.
Good deal.
Yeah, and so it's it's nice to see the downloads. This one that we're about to play a clip from has been one of the most downloaded episodes that we've had, and we recorded this during the time when you and I were recording remotely, and this was right before the election, the presidential election, and we were in one of those moments where it was really frustrating to wade through the climate of our culture at that time, which really hasn't changed much since the presidential election.
That's true.
So this is still very valuable to us.
Double whammy though. You had the
right.
The polarization of the pandemic, and then the polarization of the election that at the same time. A lot of
being locked down, things being canceled in some places, but in other places not, which we still have that in a lot of ways.
Yep.
I mean, I was talking with people this morning about people. Hey, how was your trip at St. Louis? Like, it was fantastic. Spent 3 days without really thinking about the things that I think about when I'm back home in a small town. Really,
Yeah.
I mean, downtown St. Louis we went to 2 ball games where there was 41,000 fans in the stands. We barbecue down Keener Plaza where we're sampling food all down through there, listening to bands, having fun. The St. Louis City has a mask ordinance that, they're asking people to wear them when they come inside businesses and things like that. So we followed those, but we didn't think about the things, it wasn't reminded of us constantly while we were there.
Yeah.
And it was, I guess what I'm saying is it was nice to just live a little bit. And it pointed out to me, I think, some of the different ways, the inconsistent ways that our culture has responded to everything.
Absolutely.
And so
right. Yep.
anyway, it's still, it's tough times that we're still living in. And so I think this is really relevant. So this was episode 74, Tough Times, Tougher People.
We just need to tell all of our listeners out there that, listen, if you're part of our community, if you're part of this Coaching Life podcast, whether you just started listening today for the first time or you've listened to us regularly, we just want to tell you that there's no room for you to not toughen it out if you're part of this podcast. Because listen, tough times don't last. Tough people do. And we want all of our people to grasp that and to just determine today, I'm going to be that. Like, for example, just real quick, the election's coming up this week, right? You know what's going to happen the day after the election, Pat?
Oh boy,
I've got a prediction. I've got a prediction that I know is going to be absolutely true. I mean, I can't be 100% true. I got to leave a little bit of space for the Lord to come back here. But you know what? The sun's going to come up.
Oh,
the sun is going to rise, and our country is going to be here, despite what some people think. Our country's, turn off all your social media, people, because that's the only place where you're learning that this is a total disaster. Because I go and I walk around up here in where I live, and my neighbors are friendly. We love each other, whether we have Biden signs or Trump signs or Joe Jorgensen signs or whoever you might be voting for signs in your yard, which I don't have any signs in my yard. But we love each other, and we're going to be just fine. We're going to continue with our lives. We're going to learn from this. We're going to work hard. We're going to love our friends and love our family. We're going to contribute to our communities like we always do. And that's going to be true if the election goes the way you want it to go, and it's also going to be true if the election doesn't go the way you want it to go. And that's what it means to me to be an American. Not any of those other bull crap that you see posted on frickin' social media. Can you tell that I'm about done with social media? I'm just going to post our podcast, and that's about it. I'm about done with it because it's so freaking negative that I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it.
I would follow that up by saying that for as long as I've lived, I believe that I have lived in the greatest country in the world, and I still believe that, and I thank God that I believe that, and I think it's true. So
I do too, Pat. I do too. I do not buy the narrative that we are a divided country. I just don't buy that. And I mean, there are some problems, but we are United States. We are a united country. We're more accepting. We're more compassionate and integrated than we have ever been. If you look around, I mean, the truth is, it does not mean that there are not still problems. When you say that, someone immediately pushes back and says, oh, but there's still racism and there's still people who don't accept other people of other beliefs. I know that we're never getting rid of that because
there's division.
We're never getting rid of that, but we are today more accepting than we've ever been in the history of this nation. We are not a country that's being torn apart by that. And you can point at a leader, one person, one man of our nation and say, oh, it's his fault or it's that person's fault. Listen, if one person allows you to feel that way, you got a problem. I'm sorry. If you're putting that much stake in a president of our country, you know what? Go get a life. Go get a life, because you're relying too much on one man, and he or she, whoever ends up being, they're not going to do anything for you that's going to really cause your heart to be where it needs to be every single day when you wake up. That's you. You've got to do that. So I know this is, it does feel like tough times, and so I think this is relevant. But you know what? Just be tougher. Be tougher, because you'll last, even though the tough time will not. It might feel like it's here forever, but it won't. It'll go away. And tough people will be there waiting to pick up the pieces for everyone else who maybe almost lost it during the tough times.
You had a lot of coffee that morning, it sounded like.
It was energetic, wasn't it? Was I standing
There's
up
some,
during that show?
There's
Or
some passion there. I don't know.
I don't know.
That was remote too.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
That must have been one of those late night ones. It just had a late night feel to it.
It did,
It
yes.
did, didn't it? Yeah.
I
Hey,
agree.
tomorrow morning when we wake up, yeah. We need to record late at night. We got a little more energy, it sounds like.
Oh, well, you
Or
may.
at least I do.
don't know.
Maybe
It didn't sound like I was.
Well, you couldn't get a word in edgewise there. I was on a soapbox or something. But shoot, you know what? I still feel the same way. My wife was making fun of me this morning, last night, because I said something about social media and how I'm just going to delete it from my phone. She goes, "You social media hater. You just need to use it for good." I said, "I do use it for good." She knows that, but it's everything else. It's that hole you get sucked into.
Yep.
that makes you form a worldview, a mindset that realistically isn't true in the majority of the places that we have in this country.
Right.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
We get fed a false narrative every day about a lot of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's actually it's a hot topic right now.
It is.
From a
It is.
Facebook perspective.
Yeah.
You have to be careful. You do, because it's not reality. And the trouble is that you get pieces of reality. You can take pieces of reality and arrange them in a certain way, and it changes reality. It's not a true reflection of what's going on in the world or in a life or in a day.
Man,
in
that's a
given
good
time.
word. That happens in Christianity with preaching.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah.
the reason why there's so many differences in the way people interpret things when it comes to the way a Christian should live is because you have a lot of people for many years who have selected to preach what I would call, primarily topical sermons, where they pick a topic that they want to talk about that basically fits their narrative or their agenda. And then you can find verses, if you pick and choose verses, which, by the way, folks, the chapters and verses were not part of the original manuscripts of the scripture. God gave us his word, and it was just the Bible. It was just those books that were written that we have. Those were added like in the 1500s. And so, but what happens is they've done us a disservice. While it makes it easier to find places to go, what you're looking for, it's also done us a disservice because it allows people to pick and choose some things and formulate a theology or formulate a belief about something and say, well, this is what you ought to do because look, the Bible says this here, well, it says that there. And we take it all out of context.
Yep.
And I think we live in a world where our world is completely out of context almost every day if we are formulating our worldview based off of social media.
Yeah, we are. And I know, that's... if we're not careful, our kids are doing that.
Yes.
The youth of our world they live in that realm, and it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard for an adult. Take it from me. It's hard for an adult to differentiate what is what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
When you're in that social media hole. But so think about a young person that hasn't had the experience of the world. So
It's scary. This is an incredible thing to me. And maybe you can explain how this works more from a data and an IT perspective, but have you noticed that, like TikTok, for example, I think it knows,
yeah.
it knows based on how long you watch something, a little short video, they're just short videos anyway, but all of a sudden the things that you scroll through and get in your random feed tends to be more along the lines of the things that you spent more time on.
Yep.
So it's almost like it's saying, okay, we recognize that you agree with this or that you like this, and so we're going to give you more of it.
Yep.
And then some of it may be true that you're getting, but a lot of it probably isn't.
Right.
And so all of a sudden now you're getting more fired up. Yes, that's right. Okay, I'll like that one. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. I like that. And all you're getting is the side of the argument that you want to hear, not what you need to hear, not what's the truth, but what you want to hear.
Yeah, I can't really explain that. I'll just use
hard.
the word algorithm. That's
there
how
you
they
go.
do
There
it.
you
But
go.
it's based off of metadata of the videos that you watch, and like you said, how long you watch them, and what days you watch them on, and things like that. So it's a formula. you
Yeah.
know, that they figure out, what does this, and on the surface, it's a good thing, right? We're doing this person a service. We're letting them see what they want to see.
What they want to see.
However, what's the ramifications? What's the consequences of that? That's something that a lot of people don't think about, and at some point we'll have to think about it.
Yeah,
because they're talking about it right now. That's the conversation that's going on, with Facebook. What is Facebook doing? What do they know about their users, and is it okay that they know that about their users? And have they been honest about knowing that about their users? So that's the big conversation going on now. But yeah, it's difficult, and I would say, I guess I would say that sometimes that can make tough times tougher.
Yes.
Right. So you have to be a tough person to be able to wade through that, but you can. Human beings are built for adversity. We're made for that, and we can overcome.
Absolutely, we can. Yeah,
it's a good thing to keep in mind.
Well, that's 5. That's 5.
It's 5.
So we've spent 55 or so minutes talking about 5 of our highlighted moments in this podcast here. There is one episode that got a lot of downloads. Mm-hmm. In fact, I have to go back and look through. I don't know how this didn't make our list, but it might have been in the top 5 among downloads. It might be 6. Maybe that's why it's not in the list. But it's an episode that we titled "Parents Are Crazy," which we borrowed that title from a chapter from Mike Deegan's book, which we actually had Mike Deegan on the podcast as well. A couple of weeks after we talked about this episode.
Yep.
And this episode caught a lot some attention, and so let's play. Yeah, it resonates. Let's play a little bit from it, and then we'll see if we got any listeners left.
The cold shoulder parent is usually one that was once your friend.
Yes.
I mean, this is someone who was a big supporter, maybe not a friend, but maybe a big supporter of you as the coach, and something changed. And we've all had that happen, where you had a big supporter parent who was like always kind of talking to you after practice and things like that, but then something changed. Maybe you didn't play their kid as much as you should have, or you disciplined their child or something. Something changed that has reduced this person's appreciation of you, and now the cold shoulder parent kind of throws those cold shoulder daggers at you whenever they get a chance.
Yeah.
But don't worry. As soon as their son's role returns back to where it was before, cold shoulder parent will be your friend again.
Yeah. And I could see a cold shoulder parent not really it being less about, because I feel like when it comes to role and playing time, that usually becomes anger. An angry parent, but like the cold shoulder parent might be, maybe it's one of their friends' kids. That lose their spot, or maybe I don't know. That's interesting. It's
or maybe they just don't agree with how you're coaching.
Right.
They got better ideas for how to do things.
Sure.
But again, that crosses over into another category as well. But I don't know. I think we got the idea what a cold shoulder parent is.
Yeah.
How about parent number 3 to avoid? The naive parent.
The big component of a naive parent is the kid comes home and tells a story, and then all of a sudden the coach isn't worth a crap. The team's not worth a crap.
The naive parent basically believes everything their kid says.
Right.
And they also believe that their kid is the hardest worker on the team.
Yeah.
Listen, I have emails. I kept all the emails that I received as a coach. I shouldn't have done this, probably.
You should publish them.
Well, I would never hold them against people now, because again, parents are crazy. And I think if the people who sent me these emails 10 years ago are listening now, which they're not. I mean, I can't imagine they are. They're probably like, oh yeah, I was crazy. I mean, I know that. We get that.
Oh yeah.
And you'll say the same thing about yourself 10 years from now. I mean, the stuff that you're dealing with in your kids' youth sports world right now is not going to be a big deal. Just a few years from now, it's not. And I understand that. So I didn't keep those emails. The reason I kept them, what I did was I created a folder. I didn't read them usually. I read the first couple and I realized how much stress this was putting on me. So I actually told my wife, I said, I created a folder in my Gmail today that says the stuff that I don't have time for or don't have the energy to read, and it was like a really long title, and it was just a folder. And every time I got an email that began with something like, "If my kid knew that I was emailing you, they'd be mad." But I knew, okay, I know what's coming. Or you just know when you get one of those emails, you know what it's about, because you get it. You get home and there it is. It's in your inbox, or the next morning it's in your inbox, and it happens to be the morning after a game where you sat their kid on the bench and they weren't used to sitting on the bench or something, And so I just got used to just dragging it and dropping it in that folder. And in that folder, a lot of times there are, I went back and read them, but in that folder there were paragraphs about things that happened based on their kids' relay of the information when they got home that just simply is not the way it happened. It's just not the way it happened.
Yep.
And there are reasons why. Listen, guys, your kids lie to you. Newsflash. Every child, and people are, oh my gosh, I just ticks people off there. You calling my kid a liar? Listen, there's a difference between calling your kid a name. I'm just telling you, every child lies to their parents. I don't care how good of a Christian household you have, your kid is going to lie to you. And the reason why is because they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want you to be disappointed in them. And sometimes you're like, why would I be disappointed in them? I don't care what role they have. Bull crap. You do care what role they have, and they know it. And when they are sitting the bench, or they're not good enough to beat out this other kid on the team, they got to make up some kind of story so that you're not disappointed in them. Instead, you're disappointed in the coach. And that's what happens. So often that's what happens. And that's why we're talking about this today, because someone's got to tell you.
I think that was such a popular episode because so many parents kind of were convicted, by some of the things we said. But one thing you said during that clip there was, from a coaching perspective, how much stress it causes a coach to read, to hear from parents that are upset that don't think you're doing a good job, or think that you've made a bunch of mistakes, or whatever the scenario is. There's an endless number of them. But I would say to parents out there to consider the amount of stress that you're putting on yourself by holding the coach to a certain standard, or by taking these first person accounts from kids. I've learned a lot as a dad over the past 15 years. And one of the things that I've learned is that you're never getting the full story when when you're talking to a kid. And it's not because it's not always. Sometimes it's intentional, but it's not always intentional.
I use extreme language there where I said your kids lie to you, right? And I think that's meant to get people's attention.
Sometimes they do, though.
And
blatantly.
That's true. Sometimes it might be blatant, but a lie, whether it's intentional or not, it's not the truth. I mean,
yes,
right. I mean, it's a lie. It's not the truth.
Yeah, so you leave out a little bit of information, it can change a whole story.
It doesn't make you a liar necessarily as part of your character. It's just that you're not getting the full truth really ever. And it's that way in sports, but it's that way anytime. There's a country song. It's funny. I was listening to it on the way home last week, and I think it's I can't remember what the guy's name is, but it's he says there's two sides to every story. One's the lie and one's the truth. And if you stop telling lies about me, I won't tell the truth about you. It's not Parker McCollum, but it's Russell Dickerson. I think something like that. No, that's not right. Anyway,
you know how I know that.
But I thought was that's kind of funny that he thinks his perspective is the truth, but hers is a lie. The reality is both of you probably are telling some lies in there, and the truth is somewhere in the middle.
That's a good
That's
point.
a reality.
Yeah.
I mean, even your country song isn't really that. It's probably not that true, but it was funny to me that because we all think that our perspective is the truth. You have a story about what happened. I have a story about what happened. Mine's the truth. Yours is a little bit off.
True.
Not really. Somewhere in the middle is
Right.
what actually happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And one way I know that this is true, that kids don't intentionally leave out part of the information, is because I tell my kids all the time, you guys would have no shot in court defending yourself, because there's been instances in which I've actually felt like my kids were guilty of something because they couldn't explain the story.
Yeah.
Come to find out they weren't guilty. and they're just horrible at telling the story.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not that they were lying
Yeah.
in the moment, because it would have freed them if they'd have told the truth.
Yeah.
But in that case, they just weren't able to recount all the important information. So it's an interesting thing. Being a parent is crazy, but it could also make you crazy.
It can make
So
you crazy, that's for
be
sure.
careful about that.
Yeah. So we've come to the last moment here of this episode 100, and I think a good place for us to go on today's episode is right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
This episode, actually, this is episode 2, number 2, which was titled PDP, Training the Coach. And it's where we are talking about really the birth of this podcast was from a conversation that you and I started with one another about trying to figure out ways that we can focus more on developing younger players in the game of baseball and getting them and getting parents and getting coaches and just getting organizations and people to embrace the aspect of development, which means a lot of practice and a lot of good deliberate practice and understanding what that is and understanding where to get good training and involving those people more, and things like practical things like playing less games, spending less money. And we had some very specific, very practical ideas, and we cranked them out in 4 or 5 episodes in a row, and then we released them later, in the coming months down the road. And then you and I just continued to come in here and record, and it morphed into a larger conversation, which I'm really glad that we decided to do.
Yeah, me too.
But on this day, when we were talking about this, we were just basically talking about what we felt like would be a better system of training, of baseball, a better system of youth baseball, really.
Right.
I mean, it was kind of a narrow focus at that time. And I just think it's kind of interesting to go back and listen to some of that conversation, just a couple minutes of that
It was
conversation.
our first real episode.
Really, yeah. It was our first real episode, and this isn't the entire episode, of course. It's just about a 4 or 5 minute. Really, it looks like a 3-minute clip of that. So we'll just play it, and then we'll wrap things up here. But this is where we were when the Coaching Life podcast began. The greatest investment a family can make in their child's athletic dreams is player development. The greatest investment a coach can make in his or her team is player development. The greatest investment a league or travel organization can make in their program is player development. When I speak of player development, what exactly do I mean? It's more than just one thing. Player development involves building skills, increasing overall athleticism, building instinct, mental toughness, and deliberately practicing in a manner that prepares the player for the next level at which he or she will be seeking to compete. That is a brief excerpt of a blog post that I made, and that post was called Let's Start Something New, PDP, which stands for Player Development Program. And I began that post by saying, I would like to make a proposal for a new league, a new youth baseball and softball program that is long overdue and could have potential to do so much good, especially in a world of travel ball craziness that seems to be spinning more and more out of control each year. And so today, I'm here with my co-host, Pat Martin. Hi, Pat.
Hey, Chris.
And we are going to talk about this idea of player development, and particularly, we would like to create a structure for a potential player development program. And we do not have any thought that this is going to be handled in one podcast episode. So we are anticipating this being a 2-parter, maybe a 3-parter. Who knows? It could be a 4-parter. I don't know, depending on how much we end up talking about this or how many other perspectives we bring in. But that's what we're here to do today. And Pat, do you have anything that you would like to say by means of introduction to this?
Well, I think it's just it's good for people to know, exactly why we chose the player development program to talk about it on our, I guess, our second episode now of the Coaching Life podcast. And basically, there's just a lot of interest. It seems like you wrote a blog post a few weeks ago that garnered a lot of interest, and I followed that up with an article of my own, my first ever article that I've written in my life. And there's people interested in that from a social media perspective and a personal perspective. People are still texting me about it and asking me about it, and you have it's a polarizing topic because you have a group of people that really want to get it going. They're asking, how can we get this started? What can we do to get it going? And then there's other people that are a little bit more reserved and have some obstacles and some roadblocks and some thoughts as to why they don't think that something like this is going to work or would work. So for us, we're like we talked about before, we want open discussion, we want to begin conversation, and we want to include as many people as we can. So this podcast is going to be about PDP, Player Development Program.
There's where it began.
We expanded.
We expanded, didn't we? This podcast is going to be about a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything,
really,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think by and large, everything that we do talk about is about player development in honestly a much more focused way. We talk about the person development.
Yeah.
Everything that we kind of talk about goes back to that idea of being the best person that we can be, and it doesn't stop at players. It's coaches, it's officials, it's fans, it's parents, everything that is part of the youth sports experience that we focus on. And I think that's, if we could walk away from doing 100 episodes of the Coaching Life podcast or 500 episodes of the Coaching Life podcast and help a handful of people become better, or as we've said, if we can just help ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And we've talked about it before. A lot of the times we come on here and we talk and we have our conversations, and we walk away happy because knowing that if nobody else benefited, we benefit. So
right.
It's a good thing. It's been a great experience for me. I know that it's had an impact on me as a person and as a coach. And I'm appreciative of it. I'm appreciative of everyone that listens and comes up and says, hey, how's the podcast going? Or I listen to the last episode and, have this thought and things like that. It's been really special for me.
Yeah, it has. And so we certainly want to say thank you to every one of you that have taken time to listen, whether that's one or two episodes or whether you've been here, along the way, or, whether you began with us midway through and have gone back and gotten caught up. But if you're subscribed, absolutely thank you so much for being a subscriber, and thank you for helping, listening to our mistakes and our failures and listening to us rant about those things a little bit in hopes that we'll become better people, in hopes that, we can maybe help someone along the way learn from our own mistakes and be better people, better coaches, better parents, better players, better employees. And yeah, what an awesome time. Hopefully we can do 100 more from here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to join the discussion. We started with that invitation, and we'll always have it.
It's an open conversation.
For sure.
All right.
We'll see you next week. Episode 101, right?
Yep, we'll bring a guest on
Yeah.
for next week.
Nice talking to you, Coach.